In a shocking twist following Jin BTS's emotional final concert in Amsterdam, reports are now swirling that both Jin and Jungkook have vanished from public view, and not just for rest. Speculation is growing that the two beloved BTS members may be staging a silent protest against HYBE, following the widespread backlash over the company's handling of Jin's deteriorating health during his solo tour. It all started after Jin's second and final night at the Ziggo Dome. Witnesses backstage confirmed that Jin could barely stand and had to be supported offstage. Yet, just hours after fans posted frantic messages online demanding an update, HYBE released no statement, no apology, and no explanation. That silence has only fanned the flames of public fury, and now, confusion. Days later, Jin was nowhere to be found. Neither at the airport, nor in his hotel, nor at any official BTS or HYBE-linked location. His usual communication on Weverse and Instagram stopped abruptly. It wasn't just rest. It was total radio silence. Jungkook, who had been spotted days earlier wearing a full disguise at the concert venue, was suddenly missing as well. Cancelled schedules.
No paparazzi sightings.
No updates from management. And no social media activity. Coincidence? Theories began erupting online under hashtags like #WhereIsJin, #JusticeForJin, and #Jin and Jungkook Revolt, pointing to something more serious than mere rest, a calculated withdrawal, a moment of resistance. Maybe this is the only way they could make HYBE listen. One post reads, another. They're not just tired. They're tired of being silenced. Is this a coordinated protest? For fans who followed BTS for over a decade, this feels personal. Jin has always been the group's emotional pillar, steady, loyal, and rarely confrontational. For him to completely disappear without a word, something is off. Insiders close to the group claim that Jin felt abandoned after his health concerns were minimized by tour staff. Another anonymous source stated, Jungkook was furious when he found out how bad Jin's condition had gotten without proper medical support. He left LA immediately and went straight to Amsterdam.
And now,
Both are gone.
from view.
From schedule. From HYBE's control. What is HYBE hiding? Meanwhile, the company has remained tight-lipped. No press release.
No interviews.
No answers. This is not just a PR misstep, it's a crisis. Armies are demanding clarity, but HYBE's refusal to engage is turning suspicion into full-blown distrust. Fans are asking, has HYBE lost control of its most loyal artists? Some believe Jin and Jungkook may have fled to a private location, far from Seoul, possibly abroad. Others suspect they're still in Europe, hiding in plain sight, healing in silence. Whatever the case, one thing is certain. This is not over. In true BTS fashion, the fandom isn't staying silent either. Fans are launching online petitions, trending hashtags globally, and even calling for boycotts of HYBE stock and merchandise until a formal explanation is given. The latest trending slogan, if Jin had to collapse to be heard, we'll make sure the world listens. Whether this was a protest, an escape, or a desperate need for healing, Jin and Jungkook's disappearance has now become a symbol, a painful reminder that even global superstars can suffer in silence, and this time, ARMY won't let that silence last long. In the eerie calm that followed the Amsterdam concert, a darker story began to unfold. One not scripted, not rehearsed, and certainly not expected. As days passed with no update, no message, and no sign of Jin BTS, the collective heartbeat of the fandom grew more anxious. But it wasn't just Jin who had vanished. Jungkook, the youngest and often most emotionally connected to Jin, had also pulled away from the public eye. Schedules went silent. Appearances were cancelled, and all attempts by media to reach either idol were met with impenetrable silence. What started as concern turned into a frenzy. Was this a coincidence? Or was something deeper happening behind the scenes? Whispers began to circulate that this was not simply exhaustion or a recovery break, but a message, a form of protest, a decision to vanish in order to finally be heard. It wasn't lost on anyone that HYBE, notorious for tightly managing narratives, had offered nothing. No health statement, no update, not even a vague reassurance. For fans who had witnessed Jin's physical collapse offstage, this void felt not only careless, but calculated. Behind closed doors, some insiders hinted that both Jin and Jungkook had reached their personal limits, not just physically, but emotionally. Jin, having carried the weight of a solo tour that pushed his body beyond its limit, was left feeling abandoned in what should have been a celebration of his resilience. Jungkook, who had quietly flown to Amsterdam, reportedly watched the aftermath of Jin's condition unfold without being able to intervene in any meaningful way. And perhaps, unable to watch it happen again, he chose to disappear alongside his Hyung. In online communities, fans pieced together clues, deleted schedules, shared last-seen flight logs, blurred background figures that bore striking resemblance to the two stars. Theories multiplied, but they all pointed to one shared conclusion. Jin and Jungkook were no longer operating under HYBE's playbook. They were rewriting the rules, even if it meant stepping into total darkness. If true, it was an act not of defiance for drama, but of survival, for voice, for dignity, for healing. And yet, despite the growing movement, HYBE said nothing.
No denials. No confirmations.
Just silence. This only deepened suspicions. Was this a cover-up? A PR disaster they hoped would fade with time? Or worse, was this the result of internal conflict where even Jin, one of the most loyal members of BTS, had finally decided he had had enough? Meanwhile, armies were far from quiet. Global fan bases united in protest, not just trending hashtags, but launching campaigns demanding artist protection, transparency, and accountability. Some even began emailing South Korean entertainment regulators. Because if this was what happened to a world-famous idol like Jin, what was happening to countless others without the spotlight? Some fans believe the silence will break soon, that Jin will return not just with a message, but with a reckoning. Others braced themselves for a longer absence, one that may reflect a deeper shift, an awakening of independence, of reclaiming personal agency from a system that too often treats idols as assets, not humans. Whatever the truth, one thing is now clear. This isn't just a story about disappearance. It's about what happens when silence becomes louder than any song. When the loudest message isn't in words, but in absence. And in that absence, Jin and Jungkook may have just started a new chapter. Not only for themselves, but for an entire generation of artists who've long been waiting for someone brave enough to disappear. And yet, as hours melted into days, the silence surrounding Jin and Jungkook grew even more deafening, so much so that it no longer felt like mere rest, but a deliberate refusal to participate in the narrative being forced upon them. Fans, once begging for updates, began to see the silence not as absence, but as resistance. A protest too painful to vocalize and too bold to ignore. Each moment without a Weverse post, each skipped media appearance, each unanswered call from management began to take on weight. These were not just idol acts, they were silent screams, echoing louder than any official statement ever could. HYBE's refusal to address the situation only worsened the emotional spiral. The company that once prided itself on artist care had become a ghost, watching the fallout unfold with eerie detachment. Their silence was no longer professional, it was perceived as guilt. Conspiracy theories evolved into collective truths among fans, that Jin had collapsed not just from exhaustion, but from systemic neglect, that Jungkook had followed him not out of impulse, but as a shield. The youngest protecting the eldest, as he always did, but this time not from cameras or stress, but from the crushing machine that made them both. And countless fan threads, a heartbreaking question kept surfacing. Why did it have to come to this? Why did Jin, one of the most beloved, disciplined, and emotionally transparent idols of this generation, have to vanish to be heard? Why did Jungkook, who had only just begun embracing his freedom as a soloist, feel the need to drop everything and disappear with him? Theories turned into movements. Global armies launched Protect Jin campaigns. Others created timelines of HYBE's alleged neglect, listing every ignored sign of Jin's declining health during the tour.